Our final session for today is on the Negative Investments Opportunity Fund managed by Omri Thomas of Abax Investments. The fund has established a strong long-term track record by combining valuation-aware multi-asset investing with a strong focus on downside protection. This has resulted in an asymmetric return profile which has delivered inflation-beating returns over the long term. Omri, despite the, I think, frustrating start we've had to the start of the year, where we had, if we look at December, things were looking quite rosy, and then of course we had the outbreak of the war in March, and then volatility has been all over the place. Still managing to deliver decent returns in the fund. Maybe walk us through fund year to date so far.
Yeah, we've been actually, as you correctly say, we started the year very positive on risk assets, specifically on South Africa, and the whole Middle East war derailed that picture. So we're very pleased with the returns that's been delivered despite the uncertainty, and I'll maybe refer to the uncertainty but later again. But it's actually also offered opportunities to restructure the portfolio and to reposition the portfolio into attractive assets.
Okay, and then if we look at some of the the last 12 months, what have been the key contributors to return, and also what has detracted on the other side?
Yeah, so the major contributors has been SA equities, where a lot of our stock picks have come through nicely. We became constructive on South Africa middle of last year already. And towards the end of last year, we actually saw a strong rally in our local assets, both bonds and SA equities. So over 12 months, bonds have contributed quite a bit, but mostly it's come from the equity side.
Before we maybe get into some of the broader market thinking, I just want to pick your brain a bit on how do you and the team distinguish between volatility that creates opportunity and volatility that maybe should be avoided?
That's a great question. We try and focus on fundamentals, and we think despite short-term volatility, the long-term fundamentals remain in place. So a lot of times the market, when there's volatility, is indiscriminate in its assessment of the market. So you'll see a sell down of the whole market, quality companies included. And that gives you the opportunity to pick up quality companies at decent levels. An example would be during the Middle East war, we knew Capitec would be sold down. It's one of the foreign favorites. So we immediately sold all our Capitecs, and then were able to buy it back at lower levels. So using that sort of as a trading opportunity, but that is the time to buy the quality counters. They're always going to look expensive, but the long-term compounding comes through, especially if your entry level is correct.
And then, thinking about elevated uncertainty or volatility, which has been one of the common themes today, when you look across geopolitics, inflation rates, AI, all of the big themes that are driving markets today, what matters most for portfolio decision making in your opinion, and how are you thinking about some of those themes that's feeding through?
Yeah, I think what works in a multi-asset fund is diversification. And the benefit that we've got now is, a while ago, there were very few asset classes that actually gave you real returns. You were quite concentrated in your positioning. With the recent price changes and with what's happened, you've actually got a lot more asset classes offering you decent real returns for the long term. So your ability to diversify across asset classes has improved. We know the S&P has continued to remain strong, and it's very momentum and AI driven. That is a theme that we sort of didn't participate fully on the way up, but now as there's uncertainty around it and a lot of volatility around those names, we also didn't experience the pain of the pullback. In fact, at the moment, it again offers opportunities to enter at more attractive levels.
Okay, and if you were to broadly think, if we would dig deeper into maybe one of those themes, which is global, which is elevated uncertainty, do you see any of these sort of things abating in the short term?
It's all up in the air. So every weekend, it looks like the war's going to end before the weekend, and the end of the weekend, the war's on again. So I think this uncertainty is going to last for a while. It's not an easy conflict to get a solution to, and you've got two very determined parties that needs to get around the negotiation table with severe ideological differences. So it's not an easy compromise to get to. So I think this level of uncertainty will remain elevated for a while, and we've seen it play through in the oil price. I mean, the oil price has been up to 120, then dropped back to 70, back at $90, and I think that is going to be a continued theme. But again, that volatility, we've used that volatility to do quite a few structured notes, because as volatility increases, it increases the return profile of your structured notes. So at the moment, it's the highest positioning that we've got in structured notes, and it is on the back of utilizing that increased opportunity that the volatility has given.
For the viewers, one of Abax's strengths is, of course, having a broad multi-asset toolkit, and especially as you touched on the use of hybrids and structured notes. You say that has gone up in the fund. Maybe talk us through how do you use these tools to enhance returns in this market environment?
So I think the benefit of using structured notes is that they've always got an embedded certain level of capital protection. And when there's uncertainty in the market, you never know if your timing is correct. And I think that this takes some of the timing element out of it. Because you've got that sort of a protection embedded, it gives you a comfort to sleep at night, whilst if the markets run, there's that upside optionality that's also included. So we do think in a multi-asset fund, it's a fantastic toolkit to use, and also to elevate at elevated levels of volatility, to still give you the opportunity to get new counters in the fund. So at the moment we've got about almost 23%, 24% of the fund in structured notes.
Okay, and that of course does create that, over the long term at least, that asymmetric return profile that we expect to see in the return profile, while also I think lowering overall risk.
Yeah, so it's delivered handsomely in the past. Obviously, one can't guarantee into the future, but I mean, I think over time we've also refined our processes around it. We've sort of expanded our universe of securities that we've looked to structure these notes on, and we've at the moment we've found some very nice opportunities.
Okay, and perhaps bring it, in terms of some of the other drivers of markets. I know if you're going to touch on oil and inflation. How do you see, we're probably on the cusp of one of the biggest energy shocks or energy crises that we've had in recent memory. Yet market seems to be shrugging a lot of that off.
It's a good point. I mean, if we look at the history, if we look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what happened to oil prices there was a definite flow through into inflation and to food inflation. What's different this time is it was a sort of quicker, almost turnaround in the oil price. It also didn't get to the sort of $200 level that it got to in the Russian crisis. So we'll have to see how it feeds through into inflation. But coming back to your earlier question, it also depends how long this volatility lasts. So there's definitely inflationary pressure. We know what's happened with petrol price and diesel price. It has come back a bit, but it's still up from the pre-crisis levels, and that's had a definite impact on our consumer spending. So we can see that discretionary spending has been under pressure. The SA retailers taking quite a bit of strain, together with some other headwinds, and also from a macro perspective, there's been expectations that interest rates were going to come down as we've kept inflation under control. I think the jury is out to see if inflation will be able to contain inflation both globally and locally, because we'll follow what happens with global rates. And so at the moment, the market is forecasting that we're going to see further interest rate increases, which again is a bit of a headwind for discretionary consumer spending.
And to bring it, back to SA now, how does that feed into your views on local asset classes? We know there are parts of the market, particularly the SA equity market, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Bonds has rallied quite a bit. How does that feed into your views of local asset classes?
Yeah, I think SA equities have pulled back a bit from the high levels that was achieved sort of in the first quarter of last year. So we've actually started to find quite a bit of value in SA equity again. We also think Chinese equity has been used as a sort of a funder for the AI trade into Korea. So Chinese equities have been under pressure, specifically Chinese IT companies. So we still see value in that area. SA bonds have rallied. That's now in the fair bucket. The developed market equities outside the US also fair. US bonds is fair and almost becoming attractive again. We've slightly increased our US bond exposure, and then emerging market equities have also rallied nicely and sort of also in the sort of fair to attractive area. What we don't like is developed market bonds outside the US equities, and the rand is also slightly on the expensive side.
Yeah, the rand is one of those things, that has just continued to keep on giving.
Exactly, and together with our bonds. So, I mean, I've been surprised with how resilient our bonds have been, given the volatility in global bonds. I mean, if you look at our spreads relative to US bonds, it's now at the levels it was, or lower than where it was before the oil crisis, and back to almost the global financial crisis levels. So we've significantly reduced our duration as well as our nominal bond exposure in favor of other interest rate sensitive sectors that is driven by the same macro factors.
If I look at your positioning and your top 10, what perhaps excites you the most that isn't yet fully appreciated by the market? If I look at it, I see Naspers in there. Yeah. That's obviously driven by Tencent. That's come under pressure. You've had some Sasol. Sasol's been quite volatile. Yeah. With the oil price. What are those underappreciated stocks that's in the portfolio that you think will or can come through, perhaps over the more medium term?
I think you've touched on Naspers, and maybe that is our biggest position in the fund. I mean, to put it into context, we had zero exposure, but Tencent's been under tremendous pressure. And you're getting Tencent at a decade low valuation. At the same time, the Naspers and Prosus discount has remained the same and even opened up slightly, to the point that just its investment in Tencent is worth more than the market cap of Naspers or Prosus. Tencent, Prosus and Naspers are all three buying back their own shares. So we still think the earnings fundamentals for Tencent look good over the medium term. So they're buying the company at attractive valuations, and which will compound returns over the longer term. So we've used this opportunity to really increase our position in Naspers and Prosus. And then also, as you mentioned, we've got some structures on Sasol. We've got no direct exposure to Sasol. It's all through structured notes. So again, it gives you that level of comfort with the capital protection. And then more recently, we've slightly increased our bank exposure again. We sold it at higher levels when we also reduced our bond exposure, but at current levels, again, looking extremely attractive with dividend yields approaching close to double digits again, and PE is below the dividend yield. So relative to bonds, also interest rate sensitive, banks actually a lot more attractive to us. What we've avoided and actually have sold some of is the retailers in South Africa. We think they've got the headwinds. We've spoken about the oil price drag on consumer spending. In addition, there's the sort of online betting growth, which is also a huge drag on discretionary spend, and then the inability to pass on all the inflationary increases to the end consumer, compressing margins. So we worried about the sort of clothing retailers specifically. Food retailers slightly better, and we've opted to stick to the quality retailers. So Pepkor and Shoprite mostly as our retail exposure.
Okay, thanks, Omri. Maybe two other areas I quickly want to touch on is one within the diversified mining space within SA.
Yes.
What are you favoring there? And then just to quickly move offshore, you're still constructive on China?
Yeah, so on the diversified mining sector sector, the stocks that we like is Glencore specifically. We think they've got exposure to energy and also to copper, which will be a major beneficiary of all the AI spend. And because they're a commodity trader in this volatile commodity environment, it also enables a trader to make a bit of trading profits. So they've actually held up very well. We've recently started buying some of the Anglos that we sold at high levels, and they also even commodity specific counters like Valterra. When the war broke out, we sold all our Valterra shares and have been able to buy it back at 30% cheaper levels. We haven't touched that in, but gold's also been under a lot of pressure. We had little gold exposure, and we've structured the note on both Anglo Gold and Gold Fields, again at the sort of 25-30% levels lower than its peak.
Okay. So definitely this volatility creating those opportunities
Absolutely.
For you.
Yes.
And then quickly on China.
Yes, we constructed from China. The Chinese equity market's been under quite a bit of pressure. Chinese growth has stayed reasonable. It's also been under a bit of pressure, and there's geopolitical tension with America, and we've seen some capital flowing out of China, but it's more than reflected in the valuations. Our exposure is more to capital light businesses that's not that affected by what's happening in the globe. That's more dependent on what happens to the Chinese consumer, and a lot of fintech exposure. So we do believe that part of the economy will continue to do well.
Thanks so much, Omri. That was very insightful. We certainly hope that you continue to produce those inflation-beating returns for our clients, and we look forward to see what the fund does for the rest of the year. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.